And welcome to another episode of 50 Shades and Grey with me, Elliot Davidson. Thank you for joining me. Now, this week we're going to take a little nostalgic look back over our childhoods. Now, I'm 54 now, I think, maybe 55. And I was thinking today about how things have changed so much, especially with my job, teaching kids in the school. You see how different things are and how, in fact, different I even parented my own son compared to how they were before. So I was just going to take a little trip down memory lane with you and see if some of these things actually rang a bell with you as well. So one of my first thoughts was when you used to go shopping and used to go to the sweet shop. Now they used to do this thing called a jamboree bag, and I think you never sort of knew what was in the bag. And there used to be like a little bit of a toy. There used to be a couple of sweets, and you could get a good one. I think there was a dip in there, a fizzy dip in there as well. And they were fantastic. I used to love those. But the best thing was when we used to go and get the penny sweets. So literally it was for 10p, you could get a whole bag of sweets. And we didn't have any scoops. None of that going to Sainsbury's, getting plastic scoops, no one's fingers touching it. It used to be the old woman behind the counter who'd probably just finished her 15th cigarette while she was speaking to you. And she would just grab them with her hands, and you'd sit there and you'd go, I want one of those, and two of those, and three of that. And then you realise halfway through you're spending too much money. So you then got to put stuff back. I mean, that poor woman must have thought that was the worst job in the world. I'm surprised she didn't kill anyone, actually, because it used to just must have drove her absolutely nuts with these young kids going, one of those, two of those. No, just one of those, four of those. So he put that back, two cola bottles, two fine saucers, two laces. And it used to just come to about 10p, the whole thing. So that was a great memory for me, that. And also when you used to go in these shops, they used to have, and the lads will remember this, they used to have all the footballs above, and they used to be in a net. And they were like the cheapest balls ever, like the footballs. They were like those plastic balls where you kick them and then they spin everywhere and go everywhere. But the best thing about them was they had all the Premier League teams written on them. Or in those days, it was obviously the first division, but they had all the teams written on them in the first division. And that was the great thing about those balls. There were things that I look at our kids in school, and a lot of them do the same things that we all used to do, but it's nowhere, it's nowhere near as violent as it used to be either. And that was just generally playing around. And I was trying to think today of like, what age was I getting the bus on my own? And I'm pretty sure there were times when I was in sort of year 4, year 5, and I was getting the bus home on my own. And that was walking up to the bus stop, which was quite a way, actually, when you was that age after school. And I don't remember sort of teachers dismiss us. I mean, now when we dismiss kids at school, it's like a military operation. Understandably, safeguard, you've got to be so careful. But I'm pretty sure when I was at primary school, it was kind of right, off you go. And then you went outside. If you were lucky enough to have a parent there, then great, you got to go home with your parent. But most of the time, I think sort of kids just walked home, or, I was trying to think, I was getting the bus. Now, there is no way that I know now that kids in year 4 and year 5, I don't think are getting the bus on their own. I don't think they'd be able to cope with it. I think that was something that just happened in those times, if my memory serves me correctly. I was thinking, I look at some of our kids, I don't think they'd find a bus stop, let alone actually go to the bus, get off the bus, and like sort of, you just used to turn up home, didn't you? There wasn't a moment that went past when with my son growing up where I didn't know where he is and what he was doing. I think there were years that went past when my mum didn't know where I was and what I was doing. And that was just sort of the times that they were then. And I think it was a great time to grow up. And even like the games that we used to play. I mean, there was a couple of games that there was, I remember curbsy. Curbsy was such a great game, but it was literally playing in the road. That's what you did with curbsy. It was a ball in the road. So if you don't remember, you used to stand with a mate each side of the road, and you had to throw the ball, and it used to have to hit the curb and bounce back to you the other side. Now, there were different rules that everyone played, but we used to play, if you actually hit the curb and it bounced back without it hitting the ground and you caught it, it was worth double. But if your mate ran into the road and caught it, it didn't count at all. It was the like looking back now, can you imagine kids, like, and these were busy roads. I mean, don't get me wrong, it wasn't the A12 they were playing on or dual carriageway we were playing on, but they were sort of streets around and they weren't little nice cul-de-sacs. It was like council sort of streets where I grew up, and sort of they were sort of some of the games. 40. I used to love 40, especially as it started to get dark when you get older. That's the other thing. You used to literally get home and then play out. Like you used to go and play. You used to knock for your mates and say, "Oh, is Tommy playing out?" And he used to go, and you just go off. Like when you was hungry, you went home, but there was very seldom people were called for dinner as such. It was just you just used to go feral, and it used to be great. And sort of like 40 basically was where you all started at a lamppost and you ran off and someone counted to 40, and then you used to hide under people's cars, in their bins, and you were all over the place. If I went outside now and found some kid hiding in my garden, I'd be like, what are you doing? But you used to hide in people's gardens and all sorts. And the person that was it, as it were, used to have to sort of come out far enough that they could see you and then run back to the lamppost and go 40, I see Elliot underneath so-and-so's car in number 12's garden or whatever it may be. And if you knew that he saw you, you used to have to run back to the lamppost and get to the lamppost and say 40 in before he did. Now, during that time, you'd be running over walls, you'd be falling over, you'd be getting up, and, all sorts of things that used to go on in these simple games. And these weren't teenage games, these were primary school games that we used to be playing. There was no sort of arguments on WhatsApp because obviously it weren't around. So, you used to be out getting yourself dirty. And speaking of getting yourself dirty, I remember, and I don't know if this was just where I live, but I'm sure it wasn't. We used to play in the sewers. There used to be these sewers, like sort of rain drains that went underneath a forest where we were. And we used to sort of go and play in the sewers. I think now, if I found out my son was playing in the sewer, I'd go Gary at him, if he was young, which he's not anymore, obviously. But that just wouldn't happen these days. And growing up was such a great time then. And the norm for I used to live with my nan and my two brothers, my mum. We all lived with my dad's mum. My nan, my dad wasn't there, but that was a great time growing up then because my nan used to knit like most nans did, and everything used to be knitted for you. And I was really into football kits. And I remember I had the Coventry, I think it was the Coventry home kit. It was like royal blue and it had these stripes that came down the front there. And I had the top and the shorts that I was quite lucky to get, but I didn't have the socks. So my nan said, I'll knit you some. I'll knit you some of those. I can do that. And I was like, great, she can knit me some. So she got the right colour. And then she knitted me, she knitted me these socks that once I actually had them on, they were like quilts. They were so thick because she'd done it in whatever tog, the wool was. And now I had these knitted woolen socks that I used to sort of put on with my Coventry kit because they were the only ones that matched. But the trouble was I couldn't actually get my feet in my trainers or my boots because it made me go from like a size 4 to a size 12. So it was really difficult. And then once I'd actually squeezed them in and went out and played football, then what I also learned was I couldn't wear them when it rained because if it rained, they sort of just went like they weighed about a ton each because they just absorbed all the water that was around. And then I couldn't no longer move my legs because they just sunk to the bottom in this like big heap of sheep around my feet. So it was really difficult to move. The other thing living with my nan as well, it was a big event. She had to watch the news and weather. I think it used to be on at like the BBC News and weather at 6 o'clock. So we had to watch that. And at the time I remember that was like Google. So whatever you were told on the news, that was the truth. Because in those days, it was the naive days of just believing everything that you was told. And I guess that's why everyone was so easily controlled at the same time as well. But it was like gospel, whatever you were told on the news, it was what was going on. And then obviously at the end was the weather. And again, weather was gospel. So if you were told that the next day it was going to be pouring down with rain, you were sent out with all your rain gear on, and then you quickly found out that it was wrong and you You ended up sweating most of the day in your rain mac because it was like 900 degrees outside, and the weather, like most of the time, was absolutely bloody wrong. But everyone was like, it was on the news. It's got to be true. It's on the news, like Google now. I read it on Google. It's got to be true. And then also with the weather, and then it was coming through school, and you started to get into secondary school as well. You started to get into girls, and you started to get into music as well. And then the girls was a big thing, because I remember, and this was like 7 or 8. There used to be like the school disco, and it was when everyone was sort of French kissing. That was the thing. Have you Frenched her yet? Have you given her a Frenchie? And then he used to scare the life out of me, because I was 2 or 3 years behind maturity wise growing up. I distinctly remember in secondary school behind everyone else, while everyone else sort of had beards, and I still look like a 10-year-old. And so I stayed away from these discos for as long as I could, because I'd never kissed a girl by that age, and all my mates had done all sorts of things as mates do. And I remember the first one I went to, it was horrific. It was just like seeing these kids with their mouths open, just tonguing each other with no feeling or expression, while their mates actually timed it. They were timing each other how long, and then they'd come away and go, yeah, I was Frenching her for like 2.5 minutes. That's the record. I just didn't get it. I didn't fit in a lot, I don't think. And I was just thinking, what's the point of that? Like, what's happening? And while they were kissing each other, I say kissing, it wasn't kissing. It was just sort of assaulting each other with your tongues. I remember their eyes just being open and sort of looking around, because 2.5 minutes is a blinking long time to be kissing someone, especially at that age. And then I also remember sort of getting into music at that age. And it was probably junior school, actually, when I bought my first record, and I wanted to bring it on here and show it to you, because I've still got it. But for the life of me, I can't find it now, which is ironic, obviously. And it was a 7-inch, and it was the one that I bought from the sweet shop, because it was a time when the newsagents, the sweet shops, used to sell them as well. And I think they just used to have all the old rubbish records that sort of went on the rack, and they were like P or 2p or whatever it was at the time. So the first one I ever bought was actually Rainbow, called Since You've Been Gone. And it was quite a rocky little number, actually. It's probably first what got me into sort of soft rock leading into country, which is still like today. And it was and then I remember in secondary, like, when the turnover from vinyl to CDs came. I remember the first CDs, that they were tiny. They weren't like sort of the bigger ones like that. They were tiny. And again, I've still got mine. Can I find it? No. I've seen that thing all over the place. Can't find it. But you used to have to put it in an adapter for some reason to fit it in the CD player. Now, some CD players already came with a smaller circle inside. I've got no idea what the point of that was. Like a small CD, just make a bigger CD. I mean, they didn't seem to be around for that long. But I have actually started playing my CDs again. But what I stupidly did, because of space saving years ago, I got rid of all my CD holders and put them into one of those sort of zip up files that I thought was really cool at the time. So I thought, yeah, that's it. I can flip through. But it's more of a pain in the backside zipping the thing and flicking through than it is just looking at a load of plastic ones. So I'm actually trying to buy back all of the plastic folders again. Useless information for you. I don't know why I told you that. And like I said, like the practical jokes that you used to play at school, the one that always used to make me laugh and still makes me laugh when I do it with my friends is when you just used to be walking behind your mates, and you just used to gently just clip the back of their heel, and it used to make them stumble. I don't know why that made me laugh. I don't know why it made me laugh, but it always did, and it still does now. It still makes me laugh now when I do that to my mates now. But there was also, I mean, there was wedgies and that people used to do, but the one that I'd forgotten about, and I racked my brains today just to try and think of things as you do, was, I don't even remember the spam ed thing that was around for a couple of years. And basically what it was where you had your forehead, and I'll demonstrate, I'll take my glasses off, where you had your forehead, you used to go up to your mates and just go, spam ed, like, and just used to whack their forehead. And that used to be quite amusing, apparently. But everyone used to do this spam ed sort of craze. It was always quite violent, the crazes that went around, wasn't it? And there was always like the little other jokes you used to do in school as well. We used to do that thing with a ruler, where you used to get your ruler, and we used to have like the plastic ones, and you used to ping it and then drag it along the table. So you used to go, stupid noise, but that was always great fun at school. And I also remember like the gob darts. So what a what a gob dart was, which was disgusting. It used to be so much fun because lessons were boring at the time. So you used to get a like your biro, you used to take the end out, so you were just left with a plastic tube, and then you used to get a bit of paper. I can demonstrate actually. So I used to do this. You used to get it out, and you see you ended up with this just at the end of the pen. Then you used to get a little bit of paper and you used to chew it up so it was really wet and gobby. And then you used to put it in the end of it, that end. And then you used to basically just go like that and blow as hard as you can. And it used to fire out and hit people in the back of the neck. And you could get some distance with those things, those gob darts. You could hit people 2 or 3 rows away in the back of the neck. And you just see them blinking, hell was that? And it was great because you could put it down really quickly and no one would know. So used to love a gob dart. And we're jumping around now a little bit, but before the days of sort of accessible music, there was always the classic. It's been mentioned a lot, but I'll go through it again. Of actually taping off the radio because people are always mentioning that to me as well. Basically, the DJ would come on a Sunday, it was, and do the top 40, and you used to wait for your favourite ones. But the thing was, it wasn't just, it was 3 buttons, wasn't it? Because you used to have to play and record and pause. And then on my one, I think you had to press all 3 of them again, but it made it such a faff, and they were such blinking clunky buttons that you nearly break your fingers. But you have to time it perfectly from when he started talking to the record. But you always used to get a little bit of him on there, so you always used to play your tapes or whatever it was, and you'd just have a bit of like at the end of the record because that was introducing the next one or going through the next one or whatever it may be. And there was also that time at school. And again, I think we always think it's things that are relevant to us, but everyone was, I reckon kids were doing this all over. So we used to have paper rounds, and for me, it was like the yellow advertiser. I used to deliver the yellow advertiser. I think by this time I was year sort of first, second year of school. So it was like 7 or 8 where you started to get paper rounds. And you don't see those anymore, do you? Many paper rounds. I remember getting up for that for like 2 years. They were a killer, by the way, the paper rounds, especially on the Sunday with all like the magazines. Like if you'd done a Sunday, it was an absolute killer. It used to take you 3 hours and you used to get about £3. But the yellow advertiser, I think there was two. There was a yellow advertiser and something, and you used to get extra if you had leaflets. And you have to put the leaflets before you went out in the person's house in the papers. And you used to get like £2.92, I think it was, that I got anyway. And I'd been doing it a while and it used to take me ages. And I got chatting to some mates that did it as well at school. And I was like, how comes you guys get finished so early? I said, it takes me bloody ages to do this paper round. And they were like tank traps. So what do you mean tank traps? God, they're tank traps. I was like, well, what do you do? I just dump them. Just used to dump them. After a while, and I didn't do it all the time because I found if you did it all the time, you could get caught. But you basically used to go over the old tank traps, which were exactly what they were. Like they were the old tank traps built in the war that were sort of hollow concrete with slits in. And you used to just go in there and dump all your papers in there and go home. So the whole thing, used to take you 10 minutes at tops. It was easy. So I don't know if anyone else ever recalled dumping their papers in the tank traps. And because they were free, no one ever used to really control. You always got the one busy guy that always used to go, I'm going to yellow advertiser. I'm going to bloody ring them up and get you in trouble. And you think, sod off, mate. I mean, it's a free paper. No one blinking reads it. But anyway, so I don't know if you ever used to just use the tank traps to dump your papers. And then there was playing out on skates. And I used to love this, especially on our estate where I live. There used to be about 20 of us, all had our skates. Mine, which I still got. You're probably picking up by now. I'm a bit of a hoarder. I keep all these stuff for nostalgic reasons. Yeah, I had a pair of Ruckanors. They were boots and yellow wheels. I couldn't afford the Bowers. I weren't in that league, but people have Bower skates as well. And they started to go into the inline stuff. I used to love playing out on skates, having games of run-outs. I played run-outs with my kids at school last year. I didn't know what it was. Absolutely loved it. And that was another game that we used to play. 40-handed on the estate, 20 each side, used to play run-outs. Something you don't see anymore. If you saw 20 kids coming towards you now, you'd probably absolutely freak out and panic. But it was like 40 kids all running around the estate, like tagging each other. And we used to do that on skates. And we used to be jumping over things on skates and going under things and rolling over fences and around. fantastic time, a fantastic time. And then obviously we got a bit older, and it's the last one that I'm going to talk about on this, was like your first club that you went to. And I know again, I was like, my mates were all going out when they were 16. At 16, I still looked like 12. So, I had to wait a while. But there was one near me, and it was called Oscars, which is now a McDonald's, and it was over in Gants Hill. If you know where the McDonald's on Gants Hill A12 is, that used to be called Oscars. It was an old pub, the Green Man, and used to go there, and that was my first experience of going out in the days when bouncers were just people who wanted to fight for a living and took great pleasure in it. There was always trouble there at Oscars, but it was a great time. I used to go in and like order a drink from the bar, which I was never a big drinker, but it always used to be a snake bite. That was the drink at a time, was a snake bite. So there's my little go down nostalgic. Now, the last thing that I'm going to do, because I was asked to do this, and it's a really good conversation for you guys to have with people. And it was about your hottest Walt Disney characters, like who's hot, who's not, princesses and heroines, as it were. And I thought this was a great idea. So I'm going to finish on this. However, my my knowledge of all the modern day ones, because a lot of the people now, they all know the modern day one. I've lost touch with all those. So all this Marina and Frozen, I don't really know all of those. So I'm just going to do an adapted one. But that's a great conversation to have with your friends about, especially like, you know, who would be your top heroine? Who would be the top guy? For me, and I know you're going to shout, it's not at Walt Disney. I would always put Shrek at the top. I think Shrek's a decent guy, funny. You got to have someone that's funny. Don't worry about the looks. Go for someone that's funny. They'll keep you entertained. But Shrek's my top. I'm going to go through my princesses, and I'm just going to give you a rundown of them. And it's quite straightforward. Now, again, I'm just doing animation. If I wasn't doing animation and it was just sort of general characters, Maleficent, all day long. Maleficent would win it for me all day, definitely. Sexy Maleficent. But anyway, so I'm going to go through. I'm going to go through a couple, and then I'm going to give you my winner, which again is not Walt Disney. I know. I don't think it's Walt Disney anyway. 98% of guys will give you the same answer anyway. So anyway, I'm going to go through a few, because I did think of few. Rapunzel. Take too long to get ready. She'd be a nightmare. Way too high maintenance. If you were going out with Rapunzel, she'd have to start getting ready the night before, because all that hair just drive you nuts. You'd be blow drying it, and it's still wet. Yeah, that's because it's like so long. Cut it. Just get it cut. I can't cut my hair because I'm Rapunzel. It'd be like a wet dog all the time smell around the house, wouldn't it? It'd be a blinking nightmare. And then the hair everywhere. Can you imagine the shower? Unclogging the shower if you went out with Rapunzel. It'd just be, no, Rapunzel, no. Snow White, way too happy. Not Snow White. She'd be singing at 5 o'clock in the morning. Ooh, no. Love her friends. I'd have her friends round. Way too happy though, Snow White. She can't be that happy. There is no one that's not telling me that Snow White at the end of the day is not in a hot bath with a glass of white having a little cry to herself, because she's been happy all day and running around after everyone and singing and playing with rabbits and squirrels. Way too happy, Snow White. Couldn't do Snow White. Just a personal thing. Nothing against you, Snow White. Just a personal thing. Sleeping Beauty. One word, lazy. Lazy. Sleeps too much. Way too lazy. Not having Sleeping Beauty. So the winner is, drumroll, you cannot be, and most men will give you this, Jessica Rabbit. The sexiest animation I've ever seen for anything. I just wanted her to be. There were times when I watched that and I was younger that I actually kind of thought she was real. But no wonder Roger went Lulu over Jessica Rabbit. Why wouldn't you? And that's the great thing about Jessica Rabbit. Jessica Rabbit, she went for another rabbit. She went for Roger Rabbit. He wasn't the best looking rabbit, I don't think. How do you tell a good-looking rabbit? That's another thing. Is there such thing as a good-looking rabbit? That's the great thing about rabbits. They all look the same, don't they? But most of them, actually, that's the same for most animals. Dogs, no. Get a good-looking dog. Cats, it's all about colour, but pretty much, it's not like humans. You haven't got people with big ears and big noses. Do you get cats with big ears or cats with big noses or any animals only defined by their colour? There's another conversation. Good looking animals in breed. Like, so, like, is one lion better looking than another lion? Do you think lions walk around going, he's good looking? He's a good looking lion. I don't know. I'm not sure if lions actually do that. Cows, they all look the same, don't they? Is there a good looking cow? Is there any animal that you can actually look at and go, that's a better looking one of those than that one? Anyway, rubbish today, but hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed the little bit of nostalgia. Let me know about good looking animals and let me know about your top 5 best looking heroines, princesses, Walt Disney animations, or whatever animation it may be. Anyway, guys, thank you for listening to the 50 Shades of Grey Day. I hope I kept you entertained. A little bit more light-hearted today. Got away from relationship stuff. Got a really good podcast coming out for you next week as well, which I'd hopefully watch. But make sure you subscribe, make sure you follow, and I will catch up with you soon. Take care.